Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogatz. Now, one of the cool things about working for the Art of Education is the fact that the website draws in teachers from all over the country. And that allows us to take a pulse on how things are going for art teachers everywhere. And for the past 2 years, 2018 and 2019, we have conducted a huge survey of kindergarten through 12th grade art teachers in the United States. And our goal is to share with everyone what it means to be an art teacher here in the 21st century. And for 2020, we did it again. Hey, a couple thousand art educators representing each of the 50 states answered questions about everything related to art ed. The survey results were published on March 3rd on the AOEU website, and you can read them and download the full report there on the website. We'll make sure we link to that for you. But today we're going to use this podcast episode to dive into those survey results. Megan Dehner, AOEU's senior editor, was in charge of the survey, and she and I will spend some time going over the parts of the survey and the results that we found most interesting. And she is ready now, so we're going to go ahead and dive in. All right, Megan Dehner is joining me now. Megan, how are you today?
I am wonderful, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am happy that you are back on the show. You were just here last month talking about the release of our Flex curriculum.
Yep.
And now you're back this month to talk about the State of Art Education survey. Which is also super exciting. So I guess to kind of begin with, can you just kind of give us a background on the State of Art Education survey, what it is, and why we do it?
Sure thing. So this year in 2020 is our third year of taking this survey. And it started in 2018. And it was a survey that we pushed out through our magazine and also social media to have teachers take the survey and see what kind of data we got, see what kind of responses we got. All 3 years, it's been pretty consistent, about between 1,500 and 2,000 responses. And it just gives us a really comprehensive picture on what art education looks like across the U.S. We are all in our own classrooms, and sometimes our worlds get pretty narrow, and we don't really realize that there are so many art teachers and art educators either feeling the same way that we do, or there's other perspectives and things going on. So it's really an awesome way for us to get a comprehensive view of art teachers everywhere, and then be able to share that out to everyone, even if they didn't take the survey, that they can then use to maybe not feel so alone, to then maybe understand other things going on outside of their own classroom. And it also, here at AOEU, helps us identify how we can best support the art teachers that we love so much. So if we know that there is a lot of support needed, for example, behavior management, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, we want to be able to give art teachers those resources. So it's really does a lot of things. It gives us great data and a comprehensive view. It allows us to share with our teachers that they're not alone. And then it also allows us to better support our art teachers.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned how this third year, I know changes happen every year. What are the new things on the survey, or what kind of changes were made this time around?
Sure. There wasn't a lot of drastic change. We just added a few questions, one specifically about burnout, teacher burnout, and how they feel in their classroom. And it was really interesting to see their feedback. Again, I'm sure we'll talk about it. And then also we wanted to ask teachers their curriculum resources. We know that there's a big need for teachers to feel supported in what they put in front of their students. And so we wanted to get better feedback from all of our audience about that rather than our smaller, like social media chats and whatnot. So there were a couple of curriculum resource questions and then burnout questions, and the answers were fascinating.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about those. One other question real quick though, like were
Yes.
there particular topics that you were trying to learn more about, or ones that we didn't have enough information on?
Totally. Like art teacher mental health was something that burnout kind of that
Yeah, fits in
idea
there,
led
but
that fits in there. And also teacher retention, how
oh
long
yeah.
they're staying in the profession and how many teachers responded and how many years they've been teaching, and just sort of topic interests and resources we hear. I mean, across the nation, it's so interesting, and we'll talk about it. I feel like I keep putting out the carrot, but um, what teachers outside of their art curriculum are really interested in learning about. That's what we wanted to find out more about. So, and also compare the data from the past 2 years. So now that we have 3 years of this survey to look at, it's even more fascinating to see what does and what doesn't change.
Yeah, that is interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
cool. Now, I had a great time sort of diving into the survey, seeing all the results. And so, just so everybody who's listening knows, I gave Megan some homework. I
Yep.
put together some superlatives, some of the best and the worst of the survey, just kind of by topic, and that'll kind of guide our discussion for
Yes.
the rest of the podcast here. So hopefully, it'll be kind of enjoyable. So let's start with our first one. Megan, what did you think was the most exciting result from the survey?
I Some people might think of this as more of a negative, but there are 65% of the teachers that took the survey are the only art educator in their building. And why that may seem like, well, they don't have any support, they don't have anybody, they're
Yeah.
all alone. I thought to myself, wow, what a big impact one person then can have. And so that idea of an art teacher being a leader within their building, if they're the only one, then they are really the leader when it comes to art education. And if we can help empower that one teacher, wow, we could change that whole school. So when I thought about the most exciting, while it probably a lot of times is lonely for that still art teacher, I know that there's so much power and potential in that.
Yep. Potential is exactly the word I was thinking of there. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much you can do if you are
Yes.
running a program on your own. And
You get
if you
along great
can,
with yourself.
exactly. If you can look at that positively, then I think that's a really good thing. Now, for
Mhm.
me, the most exciting was the average annual supply budget, almost $2,000. Like, I
For
don't know.
real.
I thought that was so cool because I feel like so many teachers have, I have $300 for the year for my
Mm-hmm.
500 students, and teachers talking about like, I have $1.04 per student for the whole year. You hear so much about that. And then when you look, the average supply budget is almost 2,000. Like you can teach a really good curriculum with $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that also makes me a little jealous of whichever teachers have like $11,000 that are really like pulling that average up. But
Right.
I think it's cool because that was way more than I thought it was going to be for an average budget. So I thought
Absolutely. And that has gone up every year, about $150 ish. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, we're on the right track there. So
Mm-hmm.
now on the flip side, I want to talk about what was most worrisome. Now, for me, the one that jumped out to me, the PD, professional development provided by the district, that was not good. Less than
Mm-hmm.
a quarter of people, like less than 1/4, say that they're actually getting personalized and relevant PD. Like that's not great. And then the second thing was that 40% of teachers feel burnt out at least once per week. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, that doesn't seem sustainable to me. So what seemed worrisome to you?
I am totally with you on the burnout. And that is why we asked that question, because it's something that I know I felt, I know you felt, and it's something that we wanted, that we know is out there. And so we wanted to actually pinpoint what that looks like.
Mhm.
And I think that's really scary. And I know that, okay, art teachers probably feel burned out, but all teachers probably
Yes.
feel that. We're just a little representation of that. So once a week, you know, almost
Yeah.
30%, like,
Yeah. It's tough.
and think of that impact that it has on the student environment and and we're doing our best. It's not that we want to feel burned out. It's just happening. And so that was my most worrisome for sure. But it also made me really glad that we did ask the question because I had a feeling that the feedback would be strong.
Yeah, so I think that's something that we probably need to look at moving forward.
Yeah,
Like, how do we support those teachers who are feeling burnout? Like, what can we do to help? Because
right.
like I said, that is kind of worrisome. So,
hmm
all right, moving on. Which answer did you find most surprising in the survey?
For me personally, and this is me, Megan, not for everyone else, but was that over 50% of our teachers do not fundraise or say that they don't. And I always felt like, well, everybody's fundraising. Everybody's
Right,
posting on social media that they used such and such company or that
right,
they got their PTO to donate XYZ. So I always felt like, oh my gosh, I should be doing this. I should be making sure that I can provide as much as I can opportunities for fundraising. And it turns out that like it was a weird FOMO thing. So I was surprised that it was over 50% don't. And then it goes back to a lot of teachers that maybe say that there's not funding for XYZ. Well,
right.
then if they're not trying to fund it was just sort of a weird interesting twist for me. So for me personally, it was the do not fundraise.
Yeah, that one kind of caught my attention too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's those secret $2,000 budgets that everybody has.
Right.
Know
They're like,
about.
I don't need it.
Um,
Whatever.
for me, the most surprising was the amount of people who wanted to learn more about social and emotional learning. 51% of
Totally.
people said that, that was a topic they needed to learn more about. And like, I'm not surprised that that made the list, but the fact that 51% of people said that's what they want to learn more, like that number really jumped out at me. So,
Right. And going back to, and I don't think we'll talk about, but behavior management for the third year
mhm.
in a row was the biggest struggle
Yeah.
by almost 60% of our teachers. So I think there's totally a direct correlation between the need for support about social emotional learning and the fact that behavior management is the biggest struggle. Like
Yeah.
there's such a connection there.
Yep, exactly. That all ties together.
hmm
Okay, next up, I want to know. Well, I'm going to go first because I'm actually really curious
Yes,
about this, but what
go
you're
for it.
curious to know more about. And for me, that was the level of choice in the classroom.
hmm
And I think that was a 5. Like, has that been consistent with the last few years? Like 5 out of
Yes.
10 as far as how
Yep.
much choice people offer. And I'm
Yep.
always fascinated by that, especially if you spend time on social media because you feel like you're either
Oh yeah.
teaching like step by step, discipline based art education, or it's like 100% choice and there's
Right.
nothing in between. But like in reality, like, social media is not real life. In reality,
Right.
people are in the middle. Some people offer a little bit of choice, some people offer a lot of choice, and it just kind of all falls in the middle. I think a huge majority are kind of right in the middle. But I guess what I'm curious to know is like how people define choice, because some
Oh
people be
yeah.
like, oh, I let the kids pick out which color of paint they wanted to use. And then other people are like, that's not choice. And so
Right.
I'm very curious to know, how people define that. But I think it is interesting to realize that we're not at those two extremes, and most people are in the middle, offering some kind of choice to their kids.
Right. And maybe moving forward, it would be beneficial to say choice to me is
Yeah.
allowing full spectrum, or I have stations, or choice to me is allowing my students a prompt, or, something like that. We could probably break
Mhm.
down, but I did think it was, and also it made me feel better that I felt like I was always in between, like,
Yeah.
well, I do offer choice and I
Yeah.
don't, and I do. So it proves that we're all doing our best and trying to make sure that our students feel supported, but yet also have some freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what I talk about all the time on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do what works for you, you do what works for your students. Like, you know what works best in your classroom.
Right.
What about you, though? What were you curious to learn more, that you wanted to know more about?
Well, for the third year in a row, painting and drawing were the most um, were the mediums that teachers were most comfortable teaching. And again, it's all about me, right? Not really, but I find it really interesting. Maybe I'm curious to know more about myself, that those are actually what I don't feel as comfortable teaching, right? It
Interesting.
doesn't get me jazzed as much as some of the other mediums. And so um I just thought that was interesting. Like, oh, I didn't put those as my um first choices. And so what I think is interesting though, if when teachers do look at this data, they do and they don't see themselves in the results.
Right.
And that's what's so enlightening for themselves in their teaching. So, I mean, this is not just for us to look at and gab about right now. This is for us to be able to share so teachers can kind of do a little self check of
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
current situation and also their current outlook in their classrooms.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to ask you also,
Mm-hmm.
what was better than expected in the survey, and what was worse than expected. So let's start with better.
Okay.
One answer that I saw that I was like, "Whoa, that's really good." 2/3 of teachers feel supported by the colleagues in their building. I was like, "That is a great number." Like, I did not think it would be that high, but it was really good to see that 2/3 of people felt supported. So, what about you?
Yes. That was also, I had that same in my homework. That's what I marked as also my better than expected. Because, I mean, if it's true that around 65% of teachers are the sole educator in their building, that
Hmm.
they feel supported by the other teachers that aren't in art, out of the art classroom, that they feel supported by them. Awesome. That is just so cool that they know that there's people they can talk to, that they that value what art teachers are doing in their classroom, and just sort of um, feel at home when they're at work. So I loved that number, and I thought it would be lower. So
Yeah,
that's why I thought that. Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. Now, I guess that ties into what I was thinking though about worse than expected. That 65% that you mentioned
Hmm.
that we talked about earlier.
Yes.
I did not feel great about that. I think you may have turned around my thinking on that, but when I wrote this down,
Mm.
that was my worse than expected. Like, I really
Mm.
wish more teachers had connections with colleagues and people to run ideas off of on a regular basis. All the benefits that come with
Right.
teaching with other people. But you maybe have convinced me. Like you said, the power
Wahaha.
and potential of running
Hmm.
your own program can be a good thing. So maybe it's not as bad as I thought at first glance. But
Sure.
what about you? What was worse than expected for you?
Um, so one of our extra questions, or new questions, not extra, but new questions, was about curriculum funding. And I thought it would be less than this, but the highest number of 39% said that there is no funding for their curriculum. And I was really shocked by that, thinking, well, that means that teachers are making their own,
Yeah,
getting it from
yeah, getting all
random
their lessons
sources on the
online.
internet, and that they really aren't getting the support that they need, because in order for students to succeed, they need an awesome teacher. That's what our teachers are. And then they need a strong curriculum that the teachers feel really excited about. And so I feel like that number was like, ugh. And I wonder also, too, if there is confusion between, I think there's confusion between curriculum and materials. And I think sometimes teachers, I know that they know the difference, but I don't think that they know they can ask for the funding of the difference. So when it comes to going to their district, sure, there's certain funding for materials, but when it comes to curriculum for them, there's sometimes other ways and other bands of funding that they just don't know to ask for.
Yes.
So that's something that I was like, whoa, almost 40% think that there's no money for them. but maybe there is, and there's just not the right way of asking it, or no one's told them because they thought they didn't need it.
Yeah,
So,
for about a decade, I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't know that like separate money existed in school
yes,
budgets for things like professional development. And then I finally asked to, I believe, go to a conference, and my assistant principal was just like, "Yeah, I'm so happy you asked. Like, we have all this money that you." I was
I
like, "How
know.
did I not know this?" So anyway, if
Or,
you're
for
listening to
example,
this,
oh, sorry.
no, I'm just going to say, if you're listening to this and you're not aware that,
Right,
professional development money exists, like it's worth asking about. It may, happen in your district. It may not, but God,
right,
it's worth asking about. So,
right.
sorry though. What were you going to
Oh,
say?
no, I was just going to say, for example, like a lot of districts have pushed for literacy or STEAM funding. Well, if you can advocate for yourself and say what kind of support you give in your art classroom for literacy, what kind of STEAM learning are you doing, you can get in on that funding. So those are the types of things I think teachers aren't realizing, that I didn't know when I was in that no one tells you when you graduate that you should look for these things. So
Yeah,
just wanted to add
absolutely.
that.
Cool. All right. So we are up against it with time. So let's wrap it up here.
Okay.
Last question. What did you think on the survey was most worth celebrating?
Well, again, I'm going to switch the narrative on you, Tim.
Oh my
The
goodness.
45% of teachers wanted improvement of their professional development. And so normally you would think, wow, that's like almost half of teachers are like
Yeah.
sitting in professional development with their eyes glazed over, right?
Yes.
Well, I thought of that as that shows the impact we can have at AOEU by supporting our art teachers. There are almost half of art teachers who want what we spend our heart and souls on. And so
Hmm.
that's what I was that, yes, this means we can keep doing what we're doing. That's why we're going to do the survey again next year for 2021. So those types of things, that's what got me jazzed.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I would
Mhm.
just say for me, it was really uplifting at the end of the survey to read about people's biggest joys as an art
Totally.
teacher. Because, you worry a little bit about people being on their own, and you worry about, classroom management, and all these things kind of stress you out. But then at the end, you're kind of reminded of why we do what we do, because people are talking about, I love sharing my passion with my students. I
Yes.
love, when the light bulb clicks for kids. I love seeing kids develop, year after year and get better and better and grow as artists and as people. And you're like, yes, like this is
Yay.
why we do what we do. And so being able to
Absolutely.
read that at the end is like I said, really uplifting, and it's definitely something that's worth celebrating. So cool.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again, going
You're welcome.
through this great survey. And we'll have to have you back on again, hopefully soon.
Sounds great, Tim. Thanks.
Now, before we go, I want to talk to you really briefly about the Art of Education University. If you just need one graduate course, if you want to earn a master's degree, or anything in between, make sure you check out courses from the Art of Education University. We offer over 20 online courses, including 8 hands-on studio courses that are designed to help art teachers at every stage of their professional career. So whether you're looking to develop a new art curriculum, get help with classroom fundamentals, incorporate new technology, or even just brush up on your own art making, we have the course for you. See what's available, what interests you, and what you may want to sign up for at theartofeducation.edu/courses. Okay, that will do it for us. Feel free to download the survey results from the AOEU website. As promised, we will link to that in the show notes. And feel free to reach out and share with me anything that you found interesting or exciting or worth celebrating. I would love to hear from you. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.